Hey guys, it's the Aussie Gamer here, and today I'll be showcasing 10 cars that we need back in the Forza franchise. Now before starting this, I must say to give a quick note to this list, being that some of these cars have left somewhat recently and others have been gone for nearly a decade. Some are simply everyday cars and others are so rare that they don't exist in real life anymore, only in Forza's game files. Now if you haven't already subscribed to my channel for more F84 news and gameplay, then make sure you do. If you have subbed recently, you are awesome, and if you haven't, that would be greatly appreciated. Thanks. To the first car on the list, the 2010 SSC Ultimate Aero. This back in the day was the American rival to the Bugatti Veyron and replaced European refinement with brute American horsepower. It had a 6.3 litre twin-turbo V8 pushing nearly 1300 horsepower and 1100 foot-pounds of torque. Instead of being heavy and all-wheel drive like the Veyron, it was rear-wheel drive and extremely light, being under 1250 kilograms. This meant you could get up to 257 miles an hour, which made all the hypercars of the early 2010s feel just a little bit threatened. What also made this car so special is that it had adaptive aero. Flaps would come up on the rear of the car when cornering to increase the handling capability. In practice, it sounds like a great assist, but in Forza it doesn't really do much. Since this car was so powerful and only had power going to the rear wheels, it was quite sketchy to drive. And you know what tops this car off? It had a 7-speed manual. If you're wondering, we also last saw this car in Forza Horizon 1, but was in Forza Motorsport 4 and 3. The second car is the 2010 Gumpert Apollo S. If you don't know anything about this car, you'll be in for quite a shock. Not for its performance, but something else. It looks damn ugly. While it has a design only a mother could love, it makes up for that in sheer speed and agility. The creator and ex-Audi engineer Roland Gumpert wanted a road car that packed in as much racing DNA as possible for the road. It has a twin-turbo 4.2 litre V8 from Audi with 691 horsepower and 645 foot-pounds of torque. This was not overly heavy, being in at just 1350 kilograms. The thing is that this car actually felt heavy in the game, but if you drove it just right with the correct tune, it'd be quite competitive. To keep it light, it was rear-wheel drive and mated to a 6-speed manual. I have to say it was easier to drive than the last car on this list, but due to it having a better aero design and less power. We last saw this car in Forza Horizon 1, but was also in Forza Motorsport 4 and 3. Now the third car, this one I probably want most of all on this list, the 2008 Mazda Furai. This one gives me quite a few emotions, one being joy of how amazing this car performed and looked, and sadness of what happened to it. It had a 3-rotor pushing 466 horsepower and 278 foot-pounds of torque. Now that may not sound like a lot, but it weighed at only 880 kilograms. It had a power to weight ratio of 530 horsepower per tonne, which in the day was impressive. It sent all its power to the rear wheels and was managed by a 6-speed semi-auto transmission. We last saw it in Forza Motorsport 4, and there's a good reason for it. In 2013, Top Gear confirmed that when they tested it on the Dunsfold test track in 2008, that it caught on fire and ultimately burnt to the ground. This was only 6 months after its initial reveal, and if you don't know, this car was one of one. But thankfully, before it met its demise, Forza had laser scanned it for Forza Motorsport 3. So when you hopped into the game and drove it, you were using something that basically didn't exist anymore. I find that incredibly lucky that we can see and hear the car in game, but in some ways it's also very sad. I'd love to see it come back because it'd bring back the legend of the Furai. On to the fourth car, the 2010 Joss JT1. This is a car I'm quite proud of because if you don't know, this was Australia's crack at a full-fledged supercar. It had all the right ingredients to compete with the big boys like Ferrari and Pagani, but sadly just didn't get much success. The power came from a 6.8 litre V8 pushing 500 horsepower and 443 foot-pounds of torque. It weighed in at only 940 kilograms, under a tonne, and was rear-wheel drive. Better yet, it had a 6-speed manual, making it a real driver's car. We last saw this also in Forza Horizon 1, but also appeared in Forza Motorsport 4 and 3. I know quite a few other people who would like to see this remastered into the current Forza engine. The fifth car, the 2012 Spyker Aileron, is another very special supercar that needs to come back soon. This vehicle comes from a country that doesn't usually dip its toes into supercars, this being the Netherlands. It has a 4.2 litre V8 pushing 400 horsepower and 354 foot-pounds of torque. One spec that does make my head spin is that it has a 40 valve engine, meaning 5 valves per cylinder. It actually weighs quite a bit at 1425 kilograms, but is still a joy to drive. This, like every other car on this list so far, is rear-wheel drive. But unlike the others, it has a 6-speed ZF with paddle shifters. It's not a fancy double clutch system like the competitors, but is tried and tested to be extremely tough. If you don't know about the GT2 Spykers, they took second place twice at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which I think for a very small automaker is impressive. This was only seen in Forza Motorsport 4, so maybe it's time we get it back soon. Now, the sixth car. This is the 1987 RUF YellowBird. You may remember back when Forza included RUFs instead of Porsches because of licensing, but I think it's time we see this brand make its way back into the modern games. The YellowBird I'm specifically looking at started life as a Porsche 911 Carrera 3.2, and from there it got a massive transformation. They bored the motor to 3.4 litres, gave it twin turbos with twin intercoolers, and dropped in a stronger 5-speed manual. What they got was the fastest production car of the 1980s, and also the first twin-turbo 911. It also has 469 horsepower and 410 foot-pounds of torque, and a weight of only 1200 kilograms. This car made the regular 911 Turbo 3.3 look weak, and that is an already dangerous car. We last saw this in Forza Horizon 2, but was also in Horizon 1, Motorsport 4 and 5. To the seventh car, the 2010 Devon GTX. Where do I start with this one? The design is unlike anything else, and the power plant is also crazy enough to make an experienced driver shake at the knees. It has an 8.4 litre V10 straight out of a Dodge Viper, but this one makes 650 horsepower and 587 foot-pounds of torque. This weighs around 1450 kilograms, but I can guarantee a good chunk of that is from the engine. It also has a 6-speed manual and was rear-wheel drive, because who cares about safety? One thing for it is that it has a 50-50 weight distribution. The thing is though, it actually didn't get put into production, only 2 prototypes were built, so it's almost certain you'll never see one in real life. Maybe we'll get it back in the future. To be honest, I don't think we will. Number 8 is the 1982 Delorean DMC-12. I must simply say that this is a terrible car. In terms of driving dynamics, it's dreadful, but thankfully in Forza you can change that. Stock, it has a 2.8 litre V6 pushing a measly 130 horsepower and 162 foot-pounds of torque, which even for the day was nothing special. One thing that isn't terrible is the weight, being in at only 1288 kilograms. This is thanks to the stainless steel body, which is cool and incredibly quirky. It's rear-wheel drive and has a 5-speed transmission, which is known for being as slow as a snail. Even though it is fundamentally a failure, the car still has a massive following thanks to Back to the Future. Now, this is where I would say that the car was last seen in Forza Motorsport 3 and 4, which it has, but it was recently added to Forza Street. If you don't know what Forza Street is, don't worry about it because it's just another boring mobile game. This does, however, indirectly mean that we could see it in Forza soon. It looks like they have got the licensing back for DeLorean, so maybe we'll get it in FH4 or the next Forza Motorsport. Now to number 9. One you'll probably not expect on this list, but it's here, the 2011 Toyota Prius. Yes, I know this car deserves to be hit with an atom bomb, but Forza makes this car incredibly fun. Performance-wise, it has a 1.8 litre 4-cylinder, along with an electric motor. It pushes 134 horsepower, yeah, and 169 foot-pounds of torque, and weighs in at 1380 kilograms. For the first time on this list, we don't have a rear-wheel drive car, this being front-wheel drive. It's also the slowest car here, so yeah. Anyway, you were able to put some aftermarket tuner bumpers on it, which I found funny and awesome at the same time. Sometimes cars that make the least sense are the best. We were only able to drive it in Forza Motorsport 4, but it was also a traffic car in Forza Horizon 1. And here we are at number 10. This one is the 2009 Lexus LFA Nürburgring edition. Now I know some of you out there are already thinking that we already have the LFA, which we do, but not in this form. This special edition turns an already exquisite LFA, but makes it pretty much perfect. It has the same 4.8 litre V10, but with 562 horsepower. That's 10 more than the standard car, but keeps the same 354 foot-pounds of torque. It weighs 1444 kilograms, 36 kgs lighter than the regular car, and gets some aero upgrades. There were only 50 built, and it is also an exclusive in Forza, being that it was only in Horizon 1 for a car pack you can't buy anymore. I also just love the colour, really sets off the lines of this car. Anyway guys, there you have it, my list of 10 cars that we need back in the Forza franchise. What do you think? Does my list include enough in the right order, or are there other cars that you want to see come back too? Would love to see it in the comments. Now if you want to see more from me, then make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And I'll catch you later. Peace.